Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Shan Wu, and back with us as well, Carl Bernstein. Shan, so the Southern District of New York, they're now reviewing the National Enquirer's actions. Based on what you've seen so far, do you think what they did amounts to extortion or blackmail?
I do, actually. I think it fits the elements for it. Oftentimes we associate extortion only with the idea of I'm going to hurt you if you don't pay me cash. But it can be broader than that. I mean, here the hurt, the harm, would be the damage to the reputation, the embarrassment. And the benefit, rather than being cash, is the tremendous value, actually, of Bezos' media voice. And that's what they apparently wanted him to weigh in on their behalf for that. So I think that does fit what can be an extortion. There's interstate communications going on. And there could also be state or local charges with regard to what we commonly think of as blackmail.
I mean, also, Shan, the fact that this was all written out obviously helps their case.
Oh, yes, very much so. It was quite explicit, actually. And certainly a defense lawyer would argue, well, they're just trying to make sure that false stories don't get printed, or they're maybe trying to dissuade the Washington Post. But, you know, typically that kind of conversation does not involve the threat of releasing dirty pictures about the journalists. So I think that's not going to be much of an argument for them.
Carl, I mean, whether it's criminal or not, what do you think the Enquirer's actions say about the importance of investigative journalism, the importance of not backing down in the face of this type of behavior?
I think that Jeff Bezos, in this instance, has acted heroically in terms of establishing that neither he nor the Washington Post will be intimidated, that the extortionate demand, and you have to call it that legally, or whether it's not just a legal term, the extortionate demand by the National Enquirer and its lawyers was that the Washington Post cease reporting honestly about matters that Bezos has raised in his letter. And in response, what Bezos has done here is exactly what Katharine Graham, the great owner of the Washington Post during Watergate, did. When faced with the Nixon administration's threat to take away the television licenses of the Washington Post Company, which were the economic lifeblood of the paper, because of the Watergate reporting that we were doing at the Washington Post, Katharine Graham refused to back down, backed her reporters, and did not cave in to such extortionate demands. And there's a tradition of this, but the really amazing thing that's happened here is that the National Enquirer has now opened itself up not just to an examination by the Southern District, but rather the subpoena power of that Office of the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District to look into every aspect of its behavior in this incident and get to the bottom, as I suspect they will, of whether or not there are people in the orbit of Donald Trump who are somehow involved in this. That's the subtext that Mr. Bezos seems to be suggesting in the so-called crumbs that he's leaving for witnesses to pick up and take a look at. And the Southern District's going to do it. We're going to find out what happened here.
Shan, I mean, could this also constitute a violation of a deal that federal prosecutors made late last year with the Enquirer's parent company, AMI? I mean, it granted them freedom from criminal prosecution, essentially if they kept their nose clean, while at the same time providing substantial and important, what they called substantial and important assistance to the government.
It very much could jeopardize that, Anderson. I mean, as you say, they have to keep their nose clean. Being charged with another crime would be tremendously problematic, and if that happens, I think that deal's off. So they're really in a very bad situation here. I mean, if that deal is off, they have already admitted to their complicity in those crimes there with the campaign finance crimes that Cohen was charged with. So they're right back facing those. They have no defense to that. On top of that, you've got the possibility of new investigations going on with regard to extortion. And then perhaps the most intriguing aspect is why is Mr. Pecker so upset about the Saudi connection? And as they dig into that, it's possible if you find a money trail back to the Saudis, we know that AMI has been interested in getting Saudi funding, and there could be issues there in terms of foreign money influencing the election.
Shan, I mean, this claim made by Bezos' security chief, Gavin DeBecker, who's very well known in the security realm, that he believes that it's possible that a government entity may have gotten a hold of Bezos' text messages. The most obvious question is which government entity, or could it also mean a foreign government?
Exactly. And if it's a foreign government, it goes right back to this idea of foreign influence in the elections, and that can also, if they had resources, monetary helping with this, that could also be another campaign finance violation. And there's also the intriguing aspect of if AMI was getting resources from the Saudis or some other government, that they're also acting as an agent for that foreign government. There would be a FARA violation, and we saw that go on with the Manafort and Gates situation. And that's an area that the Justice Department has become much more rigorous about enforcing, is the FARA violations.
Yeah. Carl Bernstein, thank you very much. Shan Wu as well. Obviously, we're going to be keeping a close eye on this story. Appreciate it. Much more ahead. The New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman joins us. He thinks Bezos should win a Pulitzer Prize for public service. I'll talk to him about that and the whole notion that Saudi Arabia may play into the drama next.